I take that vast sweep of evolution from starting from the void, the silence, the no thing, and the mystery of the emergence out of that of potentially everything that is. So that starts right there at that shift point, that quantum shift from the void into
that cosmologists call the Big Bang.
Into the Big Bang. And then we go up until life forms. So that's about up until about 3.5 billion years ago. That is physical evolution.
Yeah.
And from 3.5 billion years ago with life to human life is the next phase of evolution. And with human life, we've begun to enter the noological phase of evolution, where the mind and language began to create a mind sphere.
The noological phase.
The nous, from the Greek word mind. And we are entering into the phase where the creations of our mind are creating an entire new superorganism. That superorganism starts with thoughts, with our religions, our sciences, our laws, our constitutions, our technologies, our TV cameras, our rockets, our phones, our faxes. We are born now into a field of power that never existed before. So conscious evolution. See, there's been an evolution of consciousness since the first cell. That's multi-billion year evolution of consciousness.
Yes.
But only recently have we been conscious of the processes that are creating us. And only very recently have we understood the atom, the gene, the brain. And what's happening is now human consciousness is entering the process of evolution, and we can affect it consciously.
Yeah. Now, most people still, I think, often think of human consciousness as somehow apart from evolution, apart from nature, while we talk about man-made and natural as if they're two different orders.
Yes, well, for me, I believe with Willis Harman that consciousness is primary.
And Willis Harman, incidentally, is the former president of the Institute of Noetic Sciences.
That's right, and that consciousness is causal, and that conscious intent infuses the whole universe.
So that when you talk about the nothingness before the Big Bang, one might think of that as pure consciousness.
Pure consciousness. Deepak Chopra calls it the field of all possibilities. It's out of that everything arises. So the evolution of consciousness, for me, comes from the field.
Yes.
However, it takes a degree of complexity for any entity to be conscious of consciousness.
Yes.
And so if we go from the cell to the animal to the human to the great avatars, to Buddha, to Jesus. And now it seems to me more and more of us are popping into a consciousness of consciousness. And even more so, I'm calling it the emergence of a universal species. I wouldn't be surprised if Homo sapiens, the species that we all are, who is basically has a self-centered consciousness. And it's a great advance over an animal consciousness. But what we might call cosmic consciousness, or universal, or Christ consciousness, or Buddha mind, which has been templated by great avatars, I sense it's cropping up in millions of us, without benefit of clergy. It's not a religion, it's the evolution of religion. It's the evolution of the species to become aware of the consciousness that is, and to be conscious of how to guide it through intent.
One might even say it's sort of a natural state to be enlightened if we remove all of the normal obstacles that are part of our conditioning.
This is true, and you know, I got my faith from Teilhard de Chardin.
The great Jesuit theologian.
Right, in his book, The Phenomenon of Man. And what Teilhard said was that he saw God in evolution, and he saw it as a spiral, and every time there was more complexity, there was more consciousness and more freedom, from molecule to cell, from single cell to animal, from animal to human. Now, we're born on a planet that's obviously getting more complex. It's all integrating and interacting at a very fast rate. If it is true that out of complexity there comes a jump in consciousness and freedom, I think we, as members of this living planetary body, are being connected on multiple levels, electronically, internally, environmentally, such that more and more of us are experiencing ourselves as part of the whole.
Well, that's an interesting phrase, experiencing ourselves as part of the whole. It seems that one of the big dichotomies culturally, or polarizations culturally, are between people who are kind of see themselves as set apart from the whole and are very concerned with themselves and their ego and their own group, and, you know, screw the whole, as opposed to people who are seeing things holistically.
Yes, and it's so interesting because when you feel yourself to be part of a whole, you get your own growth potential, your own self-actualization through participating in the whole rather than separating from the whole. And I actually feel this is the evolution of the species right there. If you feel that your self requires you to be separate and see the other as not self, that's one thing. But if your self requires you to interact more deeply in the whole through expressing that uniqueness that you are, then you grow. And I think we're seeing the difference between people who are growing very, very rapidly in consciousness, compassion, and creativity. And on the other hand, people who are alienated, who are self-centered, who are violent, who are breaking down, they're both happening simultaneously.
Well, this issue of the unique separate self versus the self that's connected to the whole is a deep issue. I think one of the things that you point out is that given all of the technology, the powerful technology that we now have, that if people wield that technology from the perspective of the separate self, well, that spells the destruction of the human race.
See, I think we've hit the end point of Homo sapiens in a self-centered consciousness with this degree of power. It's a non-viable state. So the best thought that I could have is we're transitional into something that's emergent out of many of us from all traditions and all cultures, which is the person who experiences naturally the empathy. Naturally. You don't have to be told not to kill something because it's you.